Hello and welcome to Man's Model Moments. I have a little issue at the moment in that I can't hear anything through my speakers. So I don't know if you guys can hear me. If you can, please let me know in the chat. If not, please let me know in the chat. Because this is a little disconcerting at the moment, because I don't know, everything seems to be configured correctly. So in that case, if you guys can hear me, let me bring in Gary. Good evening, Gary.
Good evening. How you doing?
Can't hear you. So I brought you in so you can talk to people and say hello whilst I pop out and try and get this working from my side. Okay. So see you guys shortly.
Okay, cool. Hi, everyone. Unexpected host of tonight for the moment. Hope you're doing very, very well. Thank you all for joining in. There we go. Are we working again?
My thing is still not working.
Okay. It threw me out temporarily, so I don't know what's going on.
Here. I think if I leave, it automatically gets rid of the broadcast.
Ah.
Annoying.
That's yours.
What can I do here?
I don't know.
Let me see. My settings. I'm on my webcam. I'm using my microphone, which is why you can hear me. But for some definition, audio is not working. Why is that?
Answers, please, in the comments.
StreamYard Studio. It actually doesn't even seem to be playing through my computer. Right, let me just play something on YouTube. No, so it's something to do with I have not muted the tab. I can mute the site and then unmute the site. It has no effect. I think it's these are definitely on. Let me have a fiddle with my speakers. I shall be back shortly.
Okay, you have a fiddle with your speakers, mate. Wonderful. I had exactly the same problem with technology this morning. I was on the Albert Hall website trying to buy some tickets this morning for something I desperately wanted to see. And when I joined in, I was like number 2,500 in the queue. And as it got closer and closer and closer, it pops up came the instruction, up came the order payer, put the tickets in, did everything, hit reply, and it all just went back to square one. I was like, oh, no. Fortunately, it hadn't thrown me out of the thing. Otherwise, the big news item of tonight would have been the Royal Albert Hall burning to the ground with my frustration. But instead, I am going to see the Sumo in October. Oh, yes. Sumo, live in London, coming this October. I cannot wait. It's going to be so much fun. So much fun. Hey, John Alec, how you doing, dude? Good to see you there. So I don't know what he's up to. But there we go. Hey ho. So how's everyone doing? I hope everyone is doing very, very well. I think it's something to do with standing with Ukraine tonight, which obviously both of us feel very, very strongly about, and I know a lot of you guys do too. Do our very best to keep it away from politics, though, because there's plenty of other places like that, and we're not going to really do much about it, just complaining about this or anything else. But it's like what we can do as individuals, I guess. Which, do you know, have I got a mystery kit? Do you know what? I've got 2 mystery kits for tomorrow night, Jim. Just saying. Don't want to, advertise my stuff on someone else's stream necessarily, but tomorrow night I've got 2 mystery kits, so that's very exciting. Very exciting. One for you guys to say, and the other one, Nick says it's not on Scalemates or Google yet. So yeah, there he is indeed, Mystery Box Nick. Hi, dude. How are you? I've got both of your mystery boxes for tomorrow night. Oh, yeah. I love the packaging. Very Galaxy, very, is it Galaxy who use purple and gold? I think it is. I don't know. Hope you're doing well. Yeah, so try and keep the sort of the worst of politics out of it, because it seems to me over the last sort of 6 weeks that's been the worst of the whole thing, has been the appalling standards of politics from many, many people here around the world. But what a situation to be in. What a situation to be in. We all need a voice, unfortunately. Alex hasn't got one at the moment. Ian, North Wing. Well, this is it. This is the North Wing, dude. Paints here. Green screen over there. Auto cue and ring light there. And in the background is the photography area. Just waiting for a couple of extra paper rolls. So yeah, North Wing, here it is. It's been quite bizarre. It's been about 10 weeks altogether, with people going, the builders sort of suddenly saying, okay, Bob, by the way, we're not going to be here for next week. Really? Why? Oh, well, we just need to finish off something or other. Well, how about finish off my job then, dudes? But it's all done now. It's done now. Everything's finished. Everything's up and running. I've got the TV is running, a DVD player and a record player. Oh, dude, I've got some vinyl again. I can play vinyl, which is very exciting. And around that corner is the stash. You can see a bit of it there. That's about, I'd say not quite a quarter of the stash there. That's stuff. Mainly top one is like stuff I need to do pretty soon. Box reviews I need to do pretty soon. Stuff that's actually started already, and then just sort of miscellaneous tools down there. And then around the corner are another 3 racks like that, crammed with stuff. But I'll do a proper video about it soon. It's looking organised, James. Thank you very much for that. It is looking fairly organised. There's still some more organisation needs doing, but we'll get there, and hopefully the videos will look smarter and smarter. The video for Inside, John, I actually started doing that today. The edit for the interior of the North Wing. So hopefully over the next, I don't know, week or few days, hopefully, maybe, should be able to bring that to you. Jim, and a Matchbox Halifax, there is a Matchbox Halifax down there. There's a Revell Halifax up there as well. But there we go. Nick says, I wonder if ICM and other Ukrainian kit makers have plans in place to move to another country. I don't know, man. I think that the way they are is more like they're going to just sort of soldier on them. Whatever the situation is, I think they'll deal with it. They seem very resilient and very creative in the way they deal with things. And, if they'll have to go somewhere else, then there's a lot of people going to lose their jobs because they're going to not shift the whole ICM family, as it were, to another country. Poland or somewhere like that. I think they'll just deal with whatever comes their way and work around it. So I don't know. It's a horrendous situation. Ian, thanks very much, dude. It is well cool. I am actually already thinking, do you know what? I wish it'd be a bit bigger. But yeah, such is life. We're never ever satisfied with anything we do. Yeah, Graham, loads of room to model for now. Yeah, there's room to do the modelling. I mean, this whole thing is what, like 1.5 meters here of space to do model making, and of course I can use the photography area to do bigger stuff and whatever. So there's plenty of room for the actual model making. It's whether there's any room for all the models, because some of those shelves are now perilously full, and I know there's more stuff on its way. So I don't know. We'll see. I need to get rid of some of the stuff that I'm not actually going to build. When I do reviews and stuff, I can sort of get rid of some of it somehow, various means. Yeah, Phil, the more space you have, the more you feel. You're absolutely right. It's an absolute given that if I did have more room, not that way, for example, and got rid of the storage room for the garden and all that, it probably would fill up almost within a month or so. Yeah, exactly, Julian. I mean, they're not going to move away from Kyiv. I don't think in any hurry.
Apologies, everybody. I am back. I had to restart my computer. There was no other way of fixing the issue. It just got locked into one of those things, thinking that my speakers weren't there, even though they were. I haven't changed anything physically whatsoever. It's just Windows. Hurrah! Anyway, how are you, Gary?
I'm fine, thank you, man. I'm okay.
And thank you for covering for me for the last 10 minutes.
It's all right, no problem.
My microphone is very quiet now. I imagine it's switched over to the wrong. Oh no, it does seem to be on the right microphone. How's that?
I can hear you.
Okay, good stuff. It's just somebody said.
Although I can hear me about.
That also shouldn't be the case. Oh, I think. Let me check the settings because I think it reset.
Hold wrong, dear boy. Hold wrong.
Let's do all of that. How's that now? Hopefully that fixes all of that stuff.
Excellent. Yeah,
Aha.
I think so.
That sounds like it's better.
Well done.
Good. Okay. Take 2. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Man's Model Moments. So this evening, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Ukraine, and because it's been in the news a lot, obviously, with certain political events and also some comments that I made both on Facebook, the Sunday stream, and obviously a customer came into the shop this week and very kindly bought an ICM kit, some paints, and a starter tool set from me, left them at the shop to donate to a younger modeler to do 2 things. One is to support ICM as a Ukrainian manufacturer, and secondly, to encourage the hobby continuing in a younger generation, which I thought was a really nice gesture. A chap called Tracy, ex-British military, now works for Thales, the defense company. And yeah, so I did a members stream on Sunday. As it turns out, it wasn't. I set it 3 times to members only on YouTube, and it didn't take any of the times I did it. It's still set to public. I've left it as public, and a few people have said, "Oh, I can see the stream and I'm not a member." That's absolutely fine. If you want to see an example of what the Sunday streams are like, they're a lot more casual, a lot more personal, because obviously there's only, there's less people, obviously on a Sunday members only stream than on a general public one. So your questions and things can get answered a lot more directly, if you like. And it's just a way of me giving back to those people that have supported me. Now, the fact that people can see a members only stream, I don't mind. Hopefully the members don't mind it either. It's not meant to be a paywall. It's the opposite. It's giving back to people who have supported me. So it's not like I'm trying to keep exclusive content away from the public, as it were. It is meant as just a little way of showing my appreciation for those people. So, but anyway, the subject that I brought up was obviously the tirade and the trap that was set for Zelensky in the Oval Office, which I said was a disgraceful show of, well, it wasn't leadership, it was bullying, and no international leader should ever behave in that manner, regardless of however justified they feel they are, regardless of political affiliation. I do not want to say that I am a left-wing person or a right-wing person, because I'm neither, right? My politics has always been very much, well, I guess as a scientist, result-focused. I voted in the UK for the Labour Party, for the Conservative Party, for the Greens, whoever I felt would best serve the country at that time. I think that party political, bipartisan politics especially, is a little bit silly. I think in the future we will grow out of it when we become mature enough as a species. It's very tribalistic, you know. I think the idea of devoting yourself to a party, regardless of what that party's policies are, because obviously that will change over time. If you look at the Labour Party, for instance, when Tony Blair came in, New Labour, as they called it, compared to the Labour Party that my father voted for, which was, you know, very socialist, really. 2 completely different political affiliations under the same banner, right? So if you believed fully in those left-wing values of the 1970s, and many people at the time said this, of course, then the Labour Party really didn't represent those views. And we had a time in British politics where really everything was centralist. The difference between the parties was marginal. So, as I say, party politics to me isn't a thing. So my comments weren't like directed because Trump is a Republican. For a start, a Republican or a Democrat in the UK means nothing, right? So it doesn't relate to the fact that Trump is right of center compared to the Democrats. It's not against the American people. It's not against the people that voted for Trump even. They were merely saying his behavior, and J.D. Vance as well, they acted like a couple of dicks, right? And Zelensky didn't. Just purely on behaviors, whatever the negotiations were, whatever else you take, even if Zelensky had told, you know, in private, Trump that he was a, you know, pink-haired unicorn, he had no respect for him, and he took a shit on the Oval Office carpet, there was still no justification in the way he was treated. So that was part of my post, was really no leader should ever have to be subjected to that. To then kind of broaden it, I got a comment from not a member who had watched my members stream. And as I say, I don't mind non-members who have watched that stream, either live or afterwards. But I do expect a certain amount of, decorum, in the same way perhaps that Zelensky had expected a certain degree of decorum in the Oval Office with regards to comments if you're not a member, right? So you don't go into somebody's backyard uninvited and then take a crap there, which is basically what this comment did. Basically, said I was anti-Trump and that my political, how had I got so political that I was, how dare he do it on a modeling channel? There's no place for it. Well, guess what, guys? This is my channel. I can say what the hell I want within the bounds of YouTube policy. If I want to make political remarks or and it wasn't really politically motivated, as I say, it was more about decorum, leadership, and statesmanship, really. Then that's up to me, right? And I say it was a private party, if you like. My members, I'm free, absolutely. I will encourage questions on the stream, have that discussion. That's absolutely fine. But for somebody else to come in and start throwing shit around, I think is a bit crappy. Also, it was a really stupid comment, right? Because very political. And if people want to get political, that's fine. Don't call me a political hack, which is what this comment did, with very poorly researched evidence, right? So that kind of got me thinking about this. And then the guy came in and bought the kit and stuff. And I just thought, plus the rest of the world rallied around Zelensky, right? It's probably worth talking about Ukraine in general. I wanted to show my support and solidarity for the Ukraine, for its people, for the manufacturers, for its leader, all of that. And also just talk about some of the surrounding of it. And it's a military conflict, right? It's an active war. And as modelers, we tend to model military subjects. At the moment, I am doing a diorama, which will feature on the channel eventually, involving Ukrainian tanks, a Russian vehicle, Ukrainian troops. It's a topical subject. So to say that a modeling channel is exempt from politics is a bit like saying that people are exempt from politics, right? Modeling is a reflection of life, the things that we are interested in. And in some way, if we choose to do those subjects, it's some sort of political, not necessarily a political statement, but it's politically involved, right? Sensitively or not, whatever. So that's kind of the background to this. I'm sorry, that's a bit waffly, and it would have been a bit more eloquent if I wasn't thrown sideways for 12 minutes with not being able to hear anything. But I did kind of want to make a few points about this, and also talk about the sort of the wider part, kind of what ICM. Gary, I know you've spoken to ICM a lot, to Valeria. You reviewed a lot of their kits. I think you have the same kind of view that I do about ICM. They've been doing some fantastic things, in modeling, which again, with the wider scope, I mean, you can look at it without taking anything else and just say, wow, they're doing such a lot. But then if you also think, yeah, and that's in the midst of being under an active aggressive invasion, it puts another spin on it, right? It elevates it a little bit further. It's not like Airfix have been doing some great things, but they haven't had to go into a bomb shelter when the air raid sirens go, which the staff at ICM do. They have their own purpose-built bomb shelter at ICM. That's not normal. That shouldn't be normal, right? Nobody wants that. And yeah, I'm going to pause there for a second because I just want to go back to the start, back to my normal, put my normal modeling hat on for the channel and say good evening, everybody. And just go through, we've got quite a few in tonight. We've got Hans Marbus, Keith, David Barber, Adrian Hook, welcome. Adrian, let me just very quickly have a look at, see, I'm not sure I can modify moderator settings in StreamYard. I think I have to do that through YouTube. So I'll come back to that. It's just it reminded me from a conversation we'd had on Sunday. Ian Ellison, James Carnahan, welcome. I did not have my hearing aid in. No, James, I didn't. Or rather, I had it in. It just wasn't recognizing anything. That hearing aid being speakers, of course. Julian, good to see you. Casey, welcome. Casey's been doing more Sterling work, adding more ICM paints to the Paint Mixer app, which is great. We've got Graham Ball. US interference conspiracy theory, anyone? I don't think I register on the CIA radar yet. But that's a good thing. I don't want to be specially rendered anyway. Yeah. John Alec, good welcome from the States. Gremlins Modeling Mayhem, good to see you. We've got Phil, we've got Steve's Gaming, we've got Craig Jukes, hopefully doing bits of the Yamato. John Christmas, John Farrant, lots of Johns and Davids in my streams. Jim Brooke, we've got James Carnahan, Andy Freeman, welcome. Nick Johnson, good to see you, Mystery Box Nick. And a long list. But I have only got through to halfway when I was muted so far. David Markey. Obviously, people keeping themselves entertained as well. Jim Brooke, whilst I was away and Gary was covering for me. Yeah, interesting question that, Nick, and I think we'll come back to that one for sure. I think Travis Thompson. Okay, 12 minutes past. I'm back. Yeah, so it's a good point, Casey. My microphone usually, and this happens on a lot of PCs, right? Once you plug a microphone in, for some reason, Windows automatically assumes it's both a microphone and a speaker, which is the dumbest thing. It wasn't the problem this time, because that's usually my first place to go. Martin Mountford also makes an excellent point about it's not just ICM, and we will also cover that, which is why I put this title as, supporting Ukraine and not just talking about ICM. Although I think ICM is a good exemplar. Brian, welcome. Travis Thompson, Edward Williams. If I miss anybody, I do apologize. I'm trying to skip through quickly so this isn't just sounding like numbers in the Bible, which if any of you went to Sunday school or church and had to read Numbers, oh my God, the most boring book of the Bible. And Jace had to behat Abraham, and Abraham behat, oh my God. It's like the longest family tree reading ever. So yes, Simon's Modeling Shed, good to see. I think that's bringing us up pretty much coming to the present. Mark Stott, almost missed you. Be on Scale Models, Bogdan from Bucharest, welcome. The Crouch, good to see you. And I think I've got everybody. Again, if I've missed anybody, my apologies. As always for the stream, if you have a question, please put question in capital letters or QQQ in capitals, just to help us pick it out. Same if you've got a comment, do the same thing. So Julian did one up here that I just went through. So here we go. Here's a good example. Comment in capitals means, or question in capitals means we can just see it in the chat when we're scrolling through. Enables us to go through. In StreamYard, you can do things called starring. So that just helps us star those particular comments, and then we don't lose them then when we come back to it. It enables us to come kind of get a short list, if you like, of those as we're going through. Okie dokie. So there's a few things I wanted to cover. So firstly, obviously, this isn't directly supposed to be, it is a scale modeling channel, right? I don't expect that people do come for politics. But again, it was a members only stream. Tonight is slightly different. And I do try to shy away from any politics, because it is a divisive subject quite often, especially, party political politics, rather than, the kind of underlining issues and measures, if you like. But there are political elements to all of life, right? And we generally gloss over the bits that we don't agree on so much, and we talk about things we do agree on more. Modeling is a hobby. It should be fun. And when it ceases to be fun because of things like disagreements in politics, then we move on and we focus on modeling. And quite often modeling is one of those things that takes us away from those, everyday things. But there are then also other times where it reminds us of those things, right? Or we want to remember those things, especially if you think historically. So why do we do last year, right? Anniversary of D-Day. Why do we celebrate that? Why do we look at an event which actually thousands of men died? Well, men, women, and children, but the majority were men, died on D-Day and the surrounding events. It was because of the political ideologies that we were fighting against at the time, the totalitarianism, if I can get my teeth in, that was being pushed back by a group of allied countries, thankfully successfully. And that's why we celebrate D-Day, it's why we celebrate VE Day, VJ Day, it's why we remember the Battle of Britain, and all of these events. And it's not just those. We're looking at post-war as well. The Korean War, the Vietnam War. You can pick out lots and lots of different things. They have that element to them, and we are honouring those people that fought for those values in that. So again, there is a political element to that. Not that should overtake or overshadow, what we're actually doing. But when we're doing when I'm doing a Spitfire, I did the, like you did, Gary, I did the 1/24 scale Spitfire. I did mine with Johnny Johnson's aircraft, the high scoring ace in the RF, which I didn't realize, much to my surprise, when I started doing it. I then read his book, and it goes through contemporary events at the time. And of course, there's politics there. And of course, a lot of it wasn't pleasant. War is never, war is hell. It's people trying to kill each other. It's not great. So there's always going to be that element to it. But that's not why I was building the model. I wasn't building the Spitfire as a engine of death and destruction. The damage a 20mm Hispano shell would do to a body is horrific. That's not what I would want to focus on. Focus on the personal heroism and the character of the person and the reason that they were flying that Spitfire. So those are kind of the subjects I wanted to touch on. And I think trying to wash things under the table is and can be a little bit dangerous. Yeah. I've spoken a lot now, Gary. What's your kind of view on the kind of, let's call it the subject of politics in modeling? Because it's not something we touch on very often. And I think it's probably because of that, divisive possibility there. But there are times when it does come up, like recently.
I kind of try and keep away from it, not because I don't think politics is everywhere, because it very plainly is, but because it's very difficult, especially on a medium like this, for some people to maintain an ability to understand that there are other opinions than theirs. The fundamental, and this as a scientist, the fundamental thing about science is you're only temporarily right until someone proves you wrong. Yeah. But you have to accept, when you've done your research and you've written up your paper, you have to accept that there are going to be other opinions that say that's not the case because, and they come up with a reasoned argument why they disagree perhaps with your conclusions or the way you gathered the data or whatever it happens to be. But there's a respect for each other's ability and thought processes and the rights to hold that opinion. And that, I'm afraid, and it happens with modelling just as much as it does with party politics. There's people who will come in and you'll do something about Revell kit. I'll never build Revell, they're rubbish. Or I wouldn't touch an Airfix kit, they're rubbish. Or Tamiya, oh, what a load of rubbish. But hang on, no.
Or of course, that's not the right shade of dark green or brown or interior green or whatever. Yeah.
And to deny the possibility that someone may A, not agree with your opinion, and B, be just as having as much a right and ability to hold that contrary opinion is deeply troubling to me, and I'll do anything to try and push that away. I will try and not have that because, as you said, ultimately this is a hobby. Ultimately, this isn't about life and death. A lot of people, we both know, do this specifically because they have experienced that life or death situation and they don't want to have to deal with that every day. And model making gives them that moment of escape. So I don't really like that people bringing in all that nonsense into what essentially should, as you say, it should just be fun. It should just be rewarding. And do we need to do these things? But it'll always creep in, and there will always be people who cannot accept other people's right to hold a contrary opinion. And it's tricky. It's really tricky. It's a difficult path to tread. There are things I do on my channel that I've decided to do or not do because of my views, but I don't go shouting about them because I know there are other people who've got contrary views. But as you said, it's in this case, it's your channel. You do what you want. You say what you want within the bounds of YouTube's thing and common decency. And I try to do the same on my channel. And there are times when I just, I did a thing recently, about the pitfalls of setting up a YouTube channel, and there's good people that are going to come on. The keyboard warriors come on, and what you really want to say to them is one thing, normally obscenely biological, and what you really actually have to do is just say, look, whatever, mate, and you can block them if you really feel that way about it, because it is, it's not their rights to come onto our channels and say whatever they want and expect no comeback about it. But do you know what? I'm too old for it. I've seen too much for it. I've seen some stuff in the world, and I'm not having any of that on my channel. People respect each other, and that's grand, and that's what I like. That's what I like. Generally speaking, about the audience I have, and I know the audience you have, the vast majority have respect for each other and their opinions. And that's what matters. Not whether people agree with you, but whether they respect your right to hold that opinion. That's where I come from.
That's very well said. I think I actually have a poster which I had in my spare bedroom. It hasn't been unpacked yet. And it's from a website I've talked about multiple times before called despair.com. That does demotivational posters. It's the usual sort of motivational poster thing. It's got a very close focus shot, a lot of bokeh, f-stop 2.8 or something on a pair of hands, suited people shaking hands. So it's just focused on that. The rest of it blends out into soft focus. It's just entitled Compromise. And it just says, let's agree to respect each other's opinions, no matter how wrong yours is.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty much where it is,
Which unfortunately is, as you say, the kind of positions a lot of people end up in. And this is one of the reasons that I find it infuriating on a personal level, having had a scientific background where, as you're absolutely right, Gary, you form a hypothesis, you write a paper, you publish data and stuff, and you draw a conclusion from that. And you'll put a paper in a scientific conference or something, and people will come up and they will challenge you. But the thing is, there is a natural reaction to that of defense. And what a scientific, what the scientific method and mind tries to teach you is you defend the data, not the opinion and conclusion necessarily, because having those discussions, having somebody come up and challenging you and say, well, couldn't your data mean this? And if you can't look at it and say, actually, yeah, it could. If you've got a closed mind and you're just like, no, it can't. If you say, no, because if that was the case, this data would actually say this, and we run these controls which preclude that, that's fine. Because that other person may not have known that. They may not, that may have not been presented in the abstract, it's in the greater paper, and then they'll be like, oh, right, okay. So does that mean that you found X, Y, and Z? And this is how scientific progress is made. It's usually not the Alexander Fleming, lack of scientific method so that something got moldy and then the observation. It's not the eureka moments. Generally, it is this general little tiny progression of people challenging each other, and if they just, were sitting here butting up heads, you would never progress because you wouldn't have that little incremental, oh, well, that means this. Oh, okay, then let's go here. And it's like, and politics, unfortunately, is very, especially I feel, is, it's not that it's become more like this. I think it's more visible now because of the immediacy of social media and global news. It's more reactionary, or it feels more reactionary, because before you used to have to, there'd be a debate in Parliament, which was closed in the UK. A reporter would be invited in the public gallery. They would listen to it. They would go away and write their newspaper column, and then it would be published like the next day or 2 days later or whatever, and then somebody would read about it. So you have this time delay and these filters and, all this kind of stuff. Now we have cameras in what do they call it? It's the Senate in the States, right? In the House of Representatives, in the Houses of Parliament, the same thing, the House of Lords. So you can see these things happening in real time. There are channels, TV channels dedicated to this. If you can't sleep, they're a great watch sometimes, because most of the time it's as dull as dishwater. It's usually only PM questions, in the UK that gets interesting. So, yeah, and there's an interesting one. I just want to star another one here while I see out the corner of my eye. So, yeah, it does feel more reactionary. I'm sure politics has always been, even like down to a disagreement between Neanderthals or cavemen or whatever, very emotional, because it is two different ideas of how something should be done. Should we club the mammoth or should we throw spears at it? And there's only a limited amount of, I don't know, whatever they're using, obsidian or antlers or whatever to go around. So a decision has to be come to. I guess those were some of the first political debates, right? Should we use the antlers for clubs or for spears? Because a decision has to be made. And that's what politics is really about, right? It's about the collective decision of allocation of resources, whether, now it's all in capital and, what that derives to, which then comes neatly back to the Oval Office last week. And again, what I was commenting on in the private stream was not the politics of it. It wasn't about, or it wasn't initially intended as what the deal was, whether there was a peace plan, regardless. I actually stated, regardless of any of that, regardless of where you stand politically, that was a poor show. If that was my leader, if I was an American that voted for Trump or didn't vote for Trump, I would have been embarrassed by that show. That's just a human thing. That's just like, he came across as a piece of shit. I'm sorry, if you're American and you're watching this, that is how it looked to the rest of the world, or at least to a large proportion of it, which is why you got the reaction to it. And it's not that the rest of the world is left-wing or communist or socialist or whatever. It's just on a human level, that was extremely unappealing, right? Now, there is, of course, politics behind it, which inform all of that. And for those like the ill-informed US commentator on my, or commenter on my video or stream, goes back to 1994 and 1995 to the Budapest Memorandum or Agreement or whatever it was called. Can't remember now. But basically the US, memorandum, the US, the UK, and a couple of other countries, and then it was also ratified in separate agreements by some more countries afterwards. Basically, I'll roll back a little bit. After the fall of the Soviet Union, the Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and Belarus owned a lot of the Soviet nuclear arsenal, which then became their personal nuclear arsenal. And none of them really wanted that responsibility, right? It's a bit like I own a ton of guns, and when I get divorced from my wife, like some of my kids happen to live in the places where I keep hundreds of guns, and they're just like, I've never shot a gun. I don't really want all these guns in my house. Can we get away from this? Where that analogy breaks down is that those countries were also extremely fearful of Russia returning to becoming or having desires of becoming a Soviet-style superpower or an autocratic regime, and then claiming their territories back. And of course, they wouldn't do that with those countries armed with nuclear weapons. But those countries didn't want nuclear weapons, so could they agree to get rid of them in exchange for security of their borders? And that was basically what the Budapest Memorandum came down to. And the US, the UK, most of the countries said, that's okay. We will all agree. And this includes Russia. So Boris Yeltsin signed this as well. Something that Putin has obviously ridden roughshod over. Basically agreed to preserve the borders of those countries at that time. No rolling back to, prior stuff, nothing about, ethnic Russians or any of that. All of those things would be internal matters, right? Much as the Basque region, right, in Spain, the Catalan-speaking region, they have their own language, they have their own culture. There was a terrorist group, some people in Europe will remember ETA and the attacks that happened in Spain to separate the Basque area from the rest of Spain to become autonomous. Italy didn't ride in, or France didn't annex that because of that. That's their own internal matter, right? And it's the same way with those pieces like the Crimea. So it has nothing to do with that. And regardless, this was in a treaty or memorandum that we would preserve their sovereignty. And if any, and it's not just military action, this is economic or coercive behavior. So actually you could argue that this has already been done in Belarus because they have a puppet president, right, who was put there by the Russians effectively. That would also trigger the same thing. Third part of it is basically that triggers a Security Council action, much in the same way as Article 5 does in the United Nations. Now, we actually failed the Ukrainians back when the Crimea was annexed. We didn't do that. But we did on the full-scale invasion of the Ukraine in 2022. So, this isn't something that we weren't bound to do anyway through our own doing. So the US agreed to this decades ago. They agreed to it. It wasn't time limited. It wasn't for a particular instance. It was to secure the security of Ukraine with its 1995 borders from Russian aggression in the future. That's kind of as simple as it gets, right? You can go through and read it. If you look at the Belgrade Memorandum, there's tons of stuff on the internet about it. You can download the full treaties of it, I believe. So, all this stuff about being thanked, it being linked to mineral rights or loans and stuff is all bullshit, right? We just promised to help them if Russia was aggressive. And we didn't to start with. And then when they were fully invaded, we did. So those are the facts. That's the background to it all. That's the history. And that's why I say forgetting history and not being aware of these things is dangerous, because if you start arguing, oh, well, Zelensky went into the Oval Office, you didn't see 56 minutes beforehand, it was the end of the debate, irrelevant, right? Imagine going to school and you were bullied horribly for years, and then somebody said, okay, well, and you get your dad's gun from this divorce, and somebody says, right, we'll take that gun away from you, but we'll guarantee that you don't get bullied again. You're not going to get beaten up behind the bike sheds, right? These big lads, come along, say, oh, we agree with that, and then you go ahead and get bullied again. It's less like, why would you trust, well, not only the bully when he says, oh no, it's okay, I'll be good this time, but also, wouldn't that shake your faith in those partners a little bit, those other kids at school? So really, the Ukraine's been pretty good about all this so far, because it's fighting for its survival, right? So when I say I stand with Ukraine, it's because of all of that, because of the history of it. People will cite the Ukraine has been corrupt, it's had corrupt government. Yeah, it has. And it gradually got better after they went through their own revolution, basically internally. Again, all historical stuff you can check out. They've been through various purges. Even in Zelensky's government, it's had corruption issues. It's gradually got better. If you look at the corruption index in Ukraine, it's gradually gone down since Soviet occupation. Guess what? Having Russians in charge makes you more likely to be corrupt. And I don't mean the Russian people. I'm talking about Russian politics. I'm talking about the oligarchs and all those people in charge in Russia. In the same way as our own countries, right? I don't think that myself, Gary, people on the channel, on the stream at the moment, are the same as lifetime politicians or Elon Musk, for instance. But that is kind of all of the political background and the kind of rationale for my personal stance. And it is a personal stance. I understand if people feel that, well, with all of those issues and stuff, I don't want to be involved, I don't want to be part of it. That's fine. From a personal moral point of view, as Dante said, not the same one as the Inferno, but Dante, you can look it up as well, said there's a special place reserved in hell for those who stand idly by when they see evil being done, right? I would rather, and there's very little I can do as, a man in my 50s in the UK with no military training. What can I do? I can only show my solidarity. I can, put some subjects on my YouTube channel of Ukrainian stuff. I can show ICM kits and MiniArt kits and Rodin and whatever. It's a tiny, tiny, tiny thing. But if 55 million of us do that tiny, tiny thing, that adds up, right? And that also shows our governments these things. And that's where the thing starts to snowball. So that's all the heavy politics stuff, right? So if you've managed to make it through 52 minutes with me speaking for 35 of them or so about this, well done. Still got over 100 people here. So at least if you, probably some of you are just gagging at the bit to disagree with me, but that's absolutely fine too. We're going to swing it around now to the modeling aspect. And we'll start with ICM, right? So Gary, you've again had, I think, a very similar experience to ICM as myself. You've received kits from them, you've reviewed kits from them, you've built kits from them.
Yep.
I'm currently building, my channel members will know this if they've seen this in the private Discord. I'm working on the UH-60L Black Hawk, the Special Operations Black Hawk at the moment, which does require you to paint the interior before you can do anything else, because it's kind of quite open. Even when you closed it up, there's still quite a bit, and it's got a lot of stuff inside, so you kind of don't want to just close it all up. So I've been doing all of that. So it's taken a while, but it's getting on. And what are your thoughts? I mean, I know you've expressed some of these before, both on this channel and elsewhere. But what are your thoughts on ICM and what they've been doing over the past, let's say, couple of years?
I just, as you said yourself, if had the southwest of the UK been invaded by a foreign country, I don't see Margate being full of people making plastic kits somehow. I think the resilience that the Ukrainian model making industry shows, and a lot of other parts of the industry sector in Ukraine shows, is quite phenomenal. The challenges they face are just beyond imagination, and in situations that would be soul destroying. They just seem to have a fatalism, a belief that one day this will be over, and the thing to do is to carry on. You know, I've read a few things on Facebook that Valerie has shared that made me cry. To think that that's what these people have to go through at the moment. You know, it genuinely makes me upset that that's what they have, that's what they're facing. Yeah, they're still producing. You know, even with, as you said, even without a war, what they produce is absolutely amazing. The volume that they produce is amazing. They do a few tricks, like a lot of companies do, and a lot of companies get shot down for. So, like, he's okay. So I think they're on like the 4th release or so now of the B26 in a year. But hey, what's the problem with that? You know, people still buy them. It's a hell of a good kit. It's a hell of a good kit. Well, why not?
Well, and also,
why not?
Also, the most recent release of it is they've re-engineered, so it's not exactly the same kit because they've changed the dihedral of the wings for the earlier versions. So, you know, again, it's not just, you know, slapping a different paint scheme on it and calling it something new. It is actually, you know, something that's required tooling, something that's required some design. So, so yeah, I think it's
just astonishing.
I mean, I wouldn't. Yeah, I would never. What's the word? Castigate a company for being clever about their releases. You know, about getting the most out of their toolings. I think it's good. I think the difference where I do criticize, not again, criticize is too strong a word, but like, you know, categorize these is when they try to say this is a new release. It's like, well, I mean, what are you classifying as a release? You know, it's not a new tooling; it's a new scheme. You know, call it a new scheme. I'm happy with that. Don't try and say that you've released like 30 kits this year because you've released 20 different schemes of one kit, or, you know, several kits, and then done 10 toolies. It's like, no, you've got, you know, 5 new tools, 5 older kits with new parts, and then 20 new schemes. You know, let's just calibrate it so that we're all talking about the same thing. That's not the same as somebody releasing 20 new tools. Yeah. So, but I think being clever with that, you know, doing a Mark 1, a Mark 1F, a Mark 2, a Mark 7, you know, whatever it is of an aircraft or vehicle or stuff, that's just smart. You know, if you can engineer your kits that you can get that utility out of them, more power to the manufacturer. You know, doesn't matter where you're based, because at the end of the day, that's better for us. You know, the manufacturers get more money, we get more kits. There's more broad appeal. I think that's all good. Yeah,
totally. And I love what they do. The kits are extremely high quality. You know, the paints are nice. I love using the paints. I don't know what else to say about them. And just you know, sitting looking at as a model making company, I think they're doing remarkable things. They're very clever with the way they do pretty much everything in house, apart from what the print stuff, like the box and the instructions and maybe the decals, but everything else is pretty much in-house. Tool making, pressing, design, the whole thing is all in-house. So they've got complete control over it. Brilliant way to do business, and it gives them a lot of flexibility as well to respond to market forces by saying, well, you know what, why don't we bring that that version of the Sonderkraft Weisheit 251. We were going to do it last year. These are sold really well. Why don't we bring that up a year? You know, it gives you that flexibility that other companies who have to ship their tools from China, for example, can't have. And they're very smart. It also gives them sort of a strategically a very strong position because they're not having to import and export every last thing that they want to do. You know, they're in complete control of it, and all they have to do is ship it out of Ukraine when it's finished, essentially, and that's grand as well.
I think another company worth mentioning is MiniArt.
Yeah,
and again, you've spoken to MiniArt. You know, they have relocated to Poland, and that's perfectly understandable, right? It's not a long way. They've got a good tradition of making models. Revell have a lot of their injection molding done in Poland, but the Ukrainian company, you know, and again, if you look at their output, I mean, MiniArt have been the gold standard for overcomplicated, huge power kits for some time.
But they're also the company that think what I really need for this diorama is they've probably don't made it, or they're about to release it. You know, drain pipes and things like that. All these little things you think, who the hell's MiniArt have done it? Of course they have.
Yeah. I need some croissants and some wine. Well, okay, what sort of wine do you want? Do you want brandy? Do you want champagne? Do you want port? It's like we got it all here.
You know, that's great. That's superb. But again, they do some amazing sort of diorama sets now as well. They do like the base, all of the dressing of the base, a couple of vehicles, a load of figures, and you look at what's in the box and the price that they go out for, and you think, you know what, that's really tempting. It will take me the rest of my life to build it. It's really tempting.
Yeah, the big kit things they call them, don't they? It's one of the things I'm considering doing this year is their Stug. I think is it a 3G? I'm fairly sure it's a 3G with the tram that won all the awards.
Yes,
and it's all injection molded. The street is injection molded, and then they've got the it's either a lamppost or part of the tram line or whatever. Plus all the crew for the Stug, you know, and that's all in one box. And it's like, yeah, that's quite an appealing, you know, yes, you can add more to it, but you can also personalize it and do whatever, you know, you do with dioramas. But it gives you a really solid foundation. If you've never done a diorama before, it's like, well, okay, this is a bit like a starter kit for dioramas. It's like, well, here you go. I mean, God, MiniArt as a starter kit is not where I recommend people go, but I just don't want to go to the chat for a second because there's a whole bunch of really interesting things that have come up. I've starred a lot here. So Julia makes several good points here. Actually, this one I think is well worth putting. That, you know, we commemorate events like D-Day, not celebrate them. So, I mean, commemoration and celebration, it's a fine line, but I get where you're coming from. I mean, I think D-Day definitely we commemorate those events, and much like for the Great War, right? Because World War One didn't cover anybody in glory, right? It was meant to be the war to end all wars because of its horror, you know, and what man ended up doing to each other. I mean, anything we could, we did, and you know, nobody came out of that looking good, you know. World War II, it was a little bit more black and white. There were always shades of grey in war. Obviously, there were always travesties committed by all sides. But the base political ethos, if we want to go back to that word, was very much about one guy, well, actually initially two guys, Stalin and Hitler, who wanted to take over Europe, divide it up between them. Very different ideologies, but it was driven by ideologies. And the rest of the world saying no, you know. Mussolini getting in as well, obviously. and then Russia getting out when they realized that Hitler wasn't their friend at all. So there was, I think, certain World War II events I think we do celebrate, like VE, VJ Day, because they were, the cessation, the end of hostilities. It's a celebration of peace rather than the celebration of the events in the war. But I agree, commemorating is a really good word, because we are remembering and honoring those people that served in the past that enabled us to have, our present today. So thank you for that, Julian. Casey says it is a difficult topic because very often power of arguments turns into arguments of power, which again, I've mentioned it before on some of my videos. Words are important, right? As is grammar and punctuation. It's the difference between let's eat grandma and let's eat grandma, obviously with a comma after the let's eat. So yeah, it is often that, isn't it? And this is kind of where I was coming from. It is about the words, it's about the behavior. And I've mentioned this on Airfix and Chill before with the old swastika, putting it on a model. It's about intent and context. If it's for a historic accuracy piece and you are presenting something as an educational historical representation, there's no issue. Right? From certainly from my point of view, I know Facebook and other media have to be very careful and have certain policies to that they can exercise because it's their playground. But if it was in a modern day setting with somebody's modeled a bunch of 21st century youths walking down with armbands with, no, that's not okay. The intent and context there is clearly wrong. So it's important, all of these, things which people can write off to being subtleties or splitting hairs and stuff. No, it is important. We need to think about some of these things. And really what I saw, from that televised trap last week was not a lot of care being used. Normally international diplomacy is executed with care and delicacy. Diplomats earn their wages through that, right? Not everybody can be a diplomat, right? Not everybody is a peacemaker. And that was really well shown last week. Also, Graham Ball makes a very, very good point here. We must not paint the whole of the US with the Trump presidency brush, which some media has intimated. This is, I think, fundamental, right? And when I talk about Trump, I am meaning the person, the individual. J.D. Vance, the person, the individual behavior. Not even the Republican Party, because I don't believe, and I think a lot of people that voted for Trump, and again, my opinion, because I don't have facts on this, but a lot of people voted for Trump because they were sick and tired of the extreme left bullshit that was coming out, right? Now, that doesn't mean that now, just because I think Trump acted badly, that I am fully on the DEI bandwagon. Right? It doesn't mean that I think that there should be quotas for stuff. I don't. I think that's a horrific idea. I think it is so far left-wing, it becomes right-wing. It becomes fascist. Everything should be done on merit. Whether you can fly a plane, everybody should have equal opportunity. There should be absolute equality of opportunity, not of outcome. I think this is cited quite a lot. So absolutely, I don't paint all Republicans or all Democrats with the same brush. We're all just people after all, and you will agree with policies and things, and you will have voted for an individual for whatever reasons. I think a lot of people voted for Trump because they were sick of the way that the US was going. And let's face it, the Democrats did not bring their A game to that election. So you guys were, I feel for every American. I'll probably exclude 3. You can guess which. Because what choice did you have? I thought we had a rough time. I don't know what you voted for in the last election in the UK, Gary. I didn't vote. It's one of the first times I've not voted because I just didn't see anybody that I thought could represent common sense for one thing.
The only thing I would say about that, Alex, and I every year I do it on my Facebook thing, is I would encourage everyone to attend a polling station and make their feelings known. Now, if that's by spoiling your ballot,
yes,
that gets counted.
Yes.
You not turning up is voter apathy in their book. If you want to make a difference, if you want to say to these people, none of you are good enough, go and spoil your ballots, because they have to be counted, they have to be reported. That's the only, that's one thing I think very, very strongly about, as you can probably tell. It's everyone says it's your duty to vote in an election. It is your duty to attend a polling station or to cast your vote how you see fit by whatever means is available to you. But if it means you don't want any of them, spoil your damn vote. Please spoil your vote.
Yeah, I should.
Gets heard. And
I will echo that sentiment, Gary, completely, because and yes, so I'll rephrase my response as I didn't vote for any of the parties. But you can go to a polling booth and express your feelings graphically by, for example, I'm not saying I know anybody personally that did this, but by drawing a big dick on your ballot paper, that'll do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think actually the Australians have this pretty right, where it's actually you have to vote.
Yeah. Because
then you get a true representation of the country. Because what happened in the UK is we have a prime minister who won by a landslide with the smallest number with less votes than the last party lost by. It's just like, that's not good. We're ruled by a minority. You guys in the States are also, if this is news to you, you need to go and do some, again, research. Most of the country didn't vote for Donald Trump, right? He may have won the okay, you hear this a lot of time. He won the popular vote, yeah, of the people that voted. Actually, if you look at how many people that is, I think it's like 30% of the country. I mean, 70% didn't. So it's not a majority of people. It's a majority of voters, which is different. So yeah, it's the same with us. I think ours is actually lower though. That's because we were so pissed off with politics. But anyway, getting back to the original bit, yeah, I don't paint anybody with a political, not a political agenda, but like a specific political event. I don't think that the majority of Americans want to put a tariff on Canadian goods, right, and spark a trade war. So I disagree with almost everything Justin Trudeau stands for. However, he is absolutely right when he said in his press conference, was either yesterday or today, nobody wins a trade war. Everybody loses. Prices will go up in Canada. Prices will go up in the US. Who will that affect? The US populace and the Canadian populace. It won't affect Donald Trump or JD Vance or Elon Musk or all of the other billionaires, millionaires, people with $100,000 in the bank. They're fine, right? It's normal people that'll take the brunt of that. So, you know, again, I don't paint nations with the brush of an individual. You know, I always judge by actions in all parts of my life. And again, that's what I judged the other day. And I kind of started all of this. So I have some great American friends. In fact, all of the Americans I know are great. Otherwise, I wouldn't be friends with them. Some of them are Democrats. Some of them are Republicans. And I disagree with both sides on a number of points. It doesn't stop me being friends with them. It doesn't stop me thinking that they're good people or have good intentions. We might have disagreements about the way things should be done, but ultimately, I'm not going to tell them how to vote in their country or to behave in their country. It's your country. But yeah, I think everybody probably in the stream is of the same bent that we're not going to start that same sort of let's call them political slagging matches.
I think you've got it right by making it compulsory, and I would go along with that, provided they provide decent public transport for free on polling days. You don't have just one polling day; you have 3, so that people have got the option of not that I can't make Thursdays. Okay, well you've got Friday and Saturday as well. I'd make public transport free during that time. There would be other means of being able to cast, but however, every ballot paper would have to have on the bottom none of the above as an option to make it even clearer. If you don't agree with any of them, tick none of the above, and that's your job done. I'd love that. And if none of the above wins in a constituency, every party has to put forward a different candidate. Every one of them. That's just me.
I mean, to be honest, if I were
for me, thank you.
If I ruled the world, I mean, representative democracy is the best system of government that we've come up with so far. It isn't the best system of government. It's just the best. It's like science, like you said before, Gary. Temporarily, we're right. This is the best way we found of doing things so far. I don't think we've found the end solution because, let's face it sucks big time because we call it representative democracy, but it doesn't really represent the populace, as we've just said. Two allies, the former leader of the free world nation, not so sure about that now, and one of its longest allies are both ruled by minority governments. Is that really good? Yeah. I think the one thing about representative democracy that works is that nobody can be in power for too long to do too much damage. I think the fact that it's going one way and then another party gets in, it goes the other way, and then when it goes too far, I think it's that, whereas an autocracy, it can go as extreme as you want, like Russia, right? Like China, like North Korea. There's no limit, there's no checks and balances. So one of the reasons that when I disagreed with some of my Democrat American friends about, because I said, there's no way that Kamala should win because what was that word salad rubbish about? She didn't know what she represented from an external viewer point of view, as far as I could see. And they were just like, oh, but Trump. And it's like, there's going to be no democracy. He's going to be in forever. And it's like the US presidency is a position in the same, it's not quite the same as the UK, where it's a bit more of a figurehead thing. You do actually vote for your president. We don't vote for our prime minister, we vote for a party. And it's the leader of that party that then goes. Yes, they're very important and they represent it, but it's a slight difference in the system. But actually your country is run by all of the administration bureaucracy behind that. The president doesn't run the country. He represents it and he makes executive orders and stuff, but he doesn't do the day-to-day running of the country, otherwise the thing would fall apart. There are various checks and balances to prevent autocracy developing in the US. And some of it was exercised today. For instance, the US Supreme Court basically said that he has to pay the US aid stuff that he stopped. Now it's only a preliminary thing, but that shows that at least one of the checks and balances in the system is coming into play. So again, huge countries like the US don't just have these things where one guy can get on and just do anything he likes. Although Trump probably thinks that is the way. But, anyway, getting back to questions. So Craig managed to accidentally pass the Northeast Model Centre this afternoon and picked up the Hobby Boss Coyote. Just slipped into your bag, did it, Craig?
There's been a lot of accidents happening with me recently, I'll have to say.
I'll come back to Steve's point here that I didn't realize that you can't see all of that at the moment. I mean, this is another part of the whole piece, isn't it? The mineral rights of the Ukraine. The Ukraine sits on, I think, 5% of the world's resources of rare earth minerals, whilst representing something like 0.01% of its land area. So or 0.005. It's about 10 times more dense there. So they've got billions of worth of that. I unfortunately, some of that does come into play, as it would in any politics. Couple of questions here that are related. The first of which is, what are your feelings on Zvezda kits, as ICM is putting models out that Ukraine army are actually using that are actually Soviet? So I've got a couple of points on this one, personally. Now, I presume you mean things like the ZIL truck. That's one of the ones. They don't do, actually, Valeria spoke to this at Telford, because I said, I would love them to do some Soviet era subjects, because the Ukraine was, well, the major manufacturer of a lot of their military equipment at one time, that I could buy. For instance, I've done a T-72, well, it's halfway through. I had to do a Meng model one. I would have done an ICM one had it been available. And her thoughts on it were, and they did discuss it, they didn't just dismiss it out of hand, which, if you think, that's like asking somebody in World War II why they don't drink German wine. Or make wine and then label it as German or something. It's a bit sensitive. But they said they just simply don't want to. And I get that, right? The feeling, the association of it is like, she said there are so many more other interesting subjects that they can do. They would rather concentrate on those until, they said they can see a time when it is, it's not even like they're saying no, never. Once the war's over, once the feelings have passed a bit, once they're secure, maybe they'll revisit it. But at the moment, they don't want to. Now, for me, I completely get that. In terms of the models they already have that represent Soviet era subjects, I mean, what's the problem? It's a subject, right? I don't have any problem about ICM doing that. My feelings on the Zvezda kits, I'll come to with the next question. But what about you, Gary? Would you buy a MiG-25, for instance, from ICM?
I actually have done a MiG-29 of theirs, although it was in the Ghost of Kiev colours.
Likewise, yeah.
And I've done a MiG-31 from them, the Foxhound. I've done one of those. And that came with Soviet and Ukrainian colour options. It was not a great kit, but that's because it was old ICM, and they're not great kits, generally speaking. It's as you say, if they were to do them today, they'd be very, very different animals completely.
So the 35th scale ZIL truck that they've done recently is a more recent tooling. And whereas that's the 135th scale, the 172nd scale one is an old Neo Omega kit. It's horrible.
Yeah.
Really horrible. The little box trailer that they've done is with it.
It's new, isn't it?
It's new, and that's fantastic. And it's just like, this is great. I wish they'd done the truck as well, because the truck's shit.
Yeah. You can see someone got a slide mold kit for Christmas with that front end trap, and they really didn't know how to use it properly. It was awful. Really. But yeah, I don't mind it. If ICM are going to make stuff and it's interesting to model, then I'll model it, whatever the derivation. End of the day, they put out a lot of kits of Luftwaffe aircraft. Are we saying that if you buy an ICM kit of Luftwaffe aircraft, you're supporting the National Socialist cause? Of course you're not. You're recognizing the technology and a period of history. That's what it was. And if ICM decide to do, I don't know, a Sukhoi 25, I'll probably build one, because I know it's going to be a good kit. And it's a particular period of technology and a particular thought process in producing the aircraft, not because I particularly want to do something Russian. It's no. I mean, it's
the same kind of thing of, imagine you're an American who is modeling Japanese World War II subjects. does that mean that you support their surprise attack on Pearl Harbor? No, it is probably because it's a very different cultural approach to the stuff, and that comes through in their stuff, in their technology. The Zero was built to be fast and nimble, as maneuverable as it can. It didn't even have self-sealing fuel tanks to start with. I mean, you could light them up, with a match, basically. Very different philosophy from the American way of doing things. And to start with, the Japanese run rings around those old, 1930s American stuff. And then when the Americans brought out their new kit, it utterly destroyed the Zero because the Japanese just stuck with the Zero. I mean, they did other stuff as well, but the Zero was still the most produced Japanese fighter. So as an American, into the Japanese, is he an insurrectionist who does Japanese stuff? No, of course not. He's just interested by and intrigued by that. I love some of the Soviet stuff. The Su-27, the flanker. I've seen them fly at air shows, and those Tumansky turbojets just rip the air apart. It's almost a visceral experience. I mean, the fuel efficiency must be garbage, but it's not what the Soviets were concerned about, right?
I've got to tell you, back in the day, those were one of the aircraft that we were really scared of because they could carry a missile load from Poland to the UK on escort duties and back on internal fuel. Right? So that's were scary planes to have. Yeah, they were amazing. I remember when the MiG-29 came out and they were showing it at Farnborough. I think John Farley had chatted with the guys at Ukrainian, and they told him the philosophy of, right, well, first we design a fighter wing, and then we add engines to it, figure out what that does to the wing, and modify the wing to take away that effect, and so on and so forth. And you think that's an incredible philosophy of design. It's an aircraft that was, technologically astonishing. Maneuverability for its age was quite fantastic. You can admire things like that. You can admire technologies without necessarily agreeing with the ideology that's paying for it. You know what I mean? But going back to your point about Pearl Harbor, if Pearl Harbor happened yesterday, I'm not sure I would be buying Tamiya kits today.
No.
You know what I mean? It's also a point perspective. It's a time perspective. It's
Absolutely.
It's how you feel every day. That was a long time. And I have to say, at Pearl Harbor, when they take, when you visit the place, you go to the memorial of the Arizona, they have an AV show first. And it's the most even-handed and historically rigorous presentation I've seen, where you would expect them to be cursing the Japanese out. They actually say, this is why they thought they needed to do this. And this is what happened. And you say, well played. Well played you for putting the history and the context there to make us understand why these things happen, rather than this blind, they were bad. This is, at the time, yes, they that will live in infamy, absolutely. I would have felt exactly the same. But with the benefit of years of hindsight and understanding, I'm not saying it was the right thing to do, but you can see why they did it. And that's, maybe one day we'll get that with this situation. We'll be able to sit back and say, I see why he did that. But don't mean you've got to agree with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's a bit like, so I've read the Rommel papers, which are Rommel's personal, it's a collection of all of Rommel's personal diaries and writings and stuff, collected together by his son, with a foreword by his son that talks about the day he remembers his father, the Gestapo car coming, two gentlemen coming out, and his father going with them and never coming back, And reading about that, Rommel, to me, is, because somebody asked me years ago, who are some of your heroes? And I mentioned Rommel. It's just like, what? And it's just like, but you look at the man, he was a soldier. First and foremost, he was a soldier, right? He supported his men. He was very loyal. he had great admiration for other soldiers. He really appreciated the British. He didn't really think anything of the Italians.
Yeah.
You can admire that. He was on the wrong side of history, right? He was also implicated in the plot to kill Hitler because he saw the way that his country was going, and when faced with the choice of either you can come with us and we'll look after your family, you'll die a war hero, nobody will ever know anything other than that, or you can fight this and, everybody you love will die. And he was like, okay, I'll come with you. I'm not going to endanger my family. He was a man of honor, right? Yes, my grandfather was trying to kill the troops that he commanded. And if given the chance, I'm sure he would have, killed or captured Rommel, and vice versa, because that is what war is. But that doesn't stop you respecting that individual as for those parts, nothing else. And the flip side of that, of course, is exactly what I saw last week. I'll bring it back to the politics bit again, and I'll leave it, I promise. I respect the American people enormously. I respect their institutions. I don't respect the man at the moment that is leading them because of exactly that. I don't see a man of honor. I don't see somebody who is making good choices for his country. We are seeing huge tariffs now. I mean, the Chinese actually have just done a press conference. That's not going to be good for America either. None of the things that Trump is doing are good for America. So again, I won't go too far down that route because that's getting away from the main subject. But yeah, I thought it was amusing actually. One last thing on this: that the Canadian tariffs include a 100% tariff on Tesla products, which I thought was that's a very personalized fuck you, isn't it?
Yeah, isn't it just?
Anyway, the other part of this is one, and thanks, John, for that question, because your main thrust of that was on Zvezda kits, and there was another comment here about the unsaid boycott of Zvezda. And Martin says, the way I see it is that depriving someone of a living isn't going to mean shit to Putin. It just means some poor Russian family goes unfed. So I absolutely understand your point, Martin. I don't personally agree with that. But I absolutely respect your point of view in saying that. I understand why you're saying that. And it's a personal choice, right? I sell Zvezda kits in my shop. Having said that, they're all pre-war stock. So they were imported into the country before the invasion. So that is a UK distributor buying those kits. And obviously, when the war started, they wanted to unload them. So I'm just like, well, I'll take them. They're not actually on the website. I don't promote them. I don't order new Zvezda stock. I sold actually a MiL-24, Mi-24 yesterday. From that. That's been in the shop since I started. There hasn't been a big draw on Zvezda kits, surprisingly, But I provided pre-war stock if people want it. People haven't wanted it. Now, is that depriving Russian families of, are they going unfed? The way I look at it is that is even if it's a private company, right? And most companies private companies in Russia have some state element to them. Even if they're 100% private, they pay taxes to that government, right? So they are still laterally supporting them. And I wouldn't want money that has come from me, indirectly or directly, through my customers or whatever, to potentially buy something that is used to kill Ukrainians. However obliquely, however unlikely that might be that, those £3 or, say I buy an order for whatever, £500 £100 gets back to Russia, and that buys, I don't know, 2 or 3 packs of ammunition, and one of those is used to kill anybody, really. I wouldn't want that to, on my, not conscience, because it's a theoretical thing, but I wouldn't want to have that moral responsibility. So I make the choice not to do that. But I think that's a very personal choice, right? So an unsaid boycott is personal choice being expressed, right? So Martin, if you want to buy Zvezda kits, I wouldn't throw shade on you for doing that. I understand why you do it. It's not something I would do. I don't judge you for it. But I don't know. What do you think, Gary, about Zvezda kits? Because it's been mentioned a few times, right?
Yeah,
It's
entirely down to the individual how they feel about it. When I do Monday Matters, I don't highlight any Russian kits, be they from Zvezda or whoever else. I just don't highlight them. They're there on scale, mates. If people want to find out what they are and they want to go buy them, as you say, that's up to them. I'm just not going to promote them. As for it means some poor Russian family goes unfed, well, the history of Russia in the 20th century and beyond is one of revolution, essentially. One of the greatest drivers behind the Soviet Union leaving their adventure in Afghanistan was the mothers of the people who didn't come back, forcing the government to make a decision to leave. The mothers of Russia were a driving force behind the Soviet withdrawal from Afghanistan. The people of Russia are the ones who are going to make the decisions here, ultimately. They're the ones collectively who can have power in Russia to speak to the likes of Putin or whoever. Whether they will in the near future, I don't know. I really, really don't know. But I'm not necessarily going to worry too much if what I do through my choices means that some pressure gets put onto the Russian leadership to stop what they're doing. I'm quite comfortable with that. But I will not, like you, I will not disrespect anyone who wants to buy these kits, who wants to make them, who wants to celebrate them, whatever. That's absolutely grand. That's up to each person. It's just not something I will do at the moment.
Yeah,
that's all.
Yeah, I mean, I think even Russian subjects, from if ICM did make a T-72, for instance, and I built it, I know that there will be some commenters on the channel that would degrade me, and I mean degrade me for it, because some of the comments that you get as a YouTuber are pretty vile, right, and personal. You grow a very thick skin very quickly in YouTube, or you don't survive. I must say, the great majority, like you guys, very respectful, very supportive. Even when you don't agree, respect is shown 99.9% of the time. That 0.1% can be nasty because it's the 0.1% of assholes, right? I don't actually personally lose any sleep over that because they are assholes. So it doesn't matter what they say. So, for me, it's like water off a duck's back. I kind of enjoy, feeding the trolls, to be honest, and poking the bear. I mean, the person responsible if a poor Russian family goes unfed is Putin, right? 100%. There's no getting away from that. He has caused this. He has his special operation, war, invasion, however you want to call it. It is an invasion. It is a war against a sovereign country. And he has incurred the consequences of that from the international community, which up until last week was the majority of the world, bar Syria and North Korea, and some place in Africa that hasn't had free elections ever. Not a great group of people. It's like when you're standing in the corner and the people around you are all mobsters. It's like, that's not a great look. And I'm just saying, Trump, that's not a good look. But that's 100% at Putin's door. He has led all of that, and it's an autocracy. Let's not, delude ourselves about the elections that are held. No impartial observers. What's the percentages he gets? The thing that always amuses me, right, with any dictator, right, if I was going to be a dictator, I could be a dictator, right? I can see myself doing that. But if I was going to put out poll results, I wouldn't do 99% of people voted for me. It's like, yeah, right. It's like, at least coming up with something realistic. It's like in the realms of possibility. Like 52% voted for me. It's still a majority, right? It's like, I mean, at least people could maybe accept that number. But people don't question it, because if you question it, you end up in a cell, right? Or you're never seen again. That's how an autocracy works. So yeah, I certainly don't lose any sleep about not promoting or selling recent Zvezda kits, because really there's not a lot of, I can tell you as a retailer, there's not a lot of money in model kits, right? So if that's your primary chosen means of income, you can make better choices in your life, right?
Hey, you could be a YouTuber.
You could be, well, that's even worse. Well, actually, it's not worse.
Yeah,
it is better. You make more money in YouTube than the models, right? Especially if you're young, pretty, and female. I'll say that. But yeah,
we're back to monarchy above again, aren't we?
Our niche, not so much. So yeah, the whole argument of it, so models aren't specifically sanctioned against, right? But people still choose not to buy them. So that means they're not essential. They're not really, any part of GDP or anything. They're a tiny, tiny piece. We have sanctions against Russia. Most countries have sanctions against Russia on almost everything, right? That's hurting the Russian people more than anything. They have an inflation of, what is it now? It's well over 20, I think it's almost 30% or something ridiculous. The ruble's incredibly devalued. A lot of their assets overseas are seized. All of these things have the impacts, not whether I'm buying a Zvezda model. So, but again, you could, on the flip side, say, well, then why not buy a model? Because it doesn't make any difference. I say that's a personal moral choice. Yeah. So, and hence why I wouldn't, have any problem with somebody. If somebody said, I'm buying 12 million liters of Russian oil and I'm going to flog it, it's like, I might have a problem with that. But as Zvezda kit, no, not really. Even if they were buying 12 million liters of Russian oil to make model kits, I still would have a problem with it. So Rubbish Model makes an interesting point here. Czechs are one of the biggest critics of Russia and biggest funders of Ukraine, weapons, drones, and money, but we are still buying Russian gas, and I can go to any model shop in Prague and buy Zvezda. So international diplomacy and, well, the international community, let's say, is complex, right? So I don't know the fundamentals of the Czech economy. A lot of countries were still buying Russian gas quite far into the war, right? Because, and this also goes to green stuff, right? Green energy. You can't just switch everything off. So the reason we don't have a sustainable energy economy is because we can't generate enough energy through green means at the moment to sustain what we have. And unless you don't want the internet or you don't want to heat your house, we still have to use the existing means we have, right? Before we wean ourselves off these things, or somebody finally cracks fusion and then we're all fine. So I don't know whether the Czech Republic can afford, because its government has to make that difficult choice of, right, okay, we don't buy Russian gas. Are we going to have Tuesdays and Thursdays, we limit electricity to our populace. Yeah, that is the kind of decisions that politicians have to make, in those in government. And it's easy for us to criticize sometimes. I always think it's the fault of politicians, right? Because they present things. Look at the way Trump did his election thing. Day one, he said, inflation is going to stop. We're going to start lowering prices. It's like anybody who has like any 101 of economics knows that's bullshit, right? You can't just stop inflation. You can't. Nobody has the power to just do that. Otherwise, guess what? We would. Nobody likes inflation. Right? Nobody likes paying more for stuff. If you could just stop it, then you would stop it. But guess what? It's complex. You can't just do that. When you pull one lever, another one moves. Politics, I always think, and policies in politics should always be presented as, okay, we have X pot of money. We can either spend it on this or that. Which would you like to do? And then the people have the choice of, right, okay, and they understand. Then you understand, right? Okay, so we can either have the potholes in the roads filled, or we can have salt on the roads in winter. Okay, let's have the potholes filled. Right? Okay, we'll have the potholes filled. When winter comes around and it snows and we can't get anywhere, you can't then say to the politicians, why aren't the roads salted? It's like, because we didn't have the money for that. You voted to have the potholes filled, and vice versa, right? So I get why it's not easy for politicians, but they shouldn't promise bullshit things that they can't possibly deliver, right? They should just be honest. That's one of the biggest problems with politics in general, right? Is there's a complete lack of honesty. So yeah, I get what you're saying, but I don't know enough about the macroeconomics of the Czech Republic to see why they're still buying Russian gas. Who knows?
Yeah.
I need to go back to chat because I've just been going on starred questions at the moment. But here's a question that came up, which is related to part of this question that I posed, which was that half of the motivation for having this topic tonight was a chap called Tracy. It is a chap who came into the shop. He bought a model for himself, and he also bought an ICM Berg Panther, the one with the Panzer IV turret, a pack of paint, and a modeler's like starting modeling toolkit from me. And I said I'll put the paintbrushes and glue in there and some sprue glue FOC as well, because he left that to be given to a younger modeler. Now, I did discuss with him that he wanted to buy an ICM kit because he wanted to support Ukraine in a small way, and he wanted it to be given to a youngster because he wanted to support increasing the hobby or sustaining the hobby. And I did explain ICM kits they're not beginner kits, so this isn't for a beginner. This is really for a younger intermediate modeler, because ICM kits can be quite involved. So that kind of feeds into this question here with that Steve has put up. With phones and tablets being so popular these days, are enough youngsters taking up modeling to keep it viable over the years? Now, I have particular views on this, but Gary, what do you think about that one? It's a common question that comes up, isn't it?
Yeah, I really don't know. There are various sort of schemes. Airfix have done that thing with the Scout Association, making a badge that they can earn or whatever. I don't know what the numbers are like. I know that my viewership is very, very much planted firmly in the 55 to 65 demographic. Whether or not there are enough youngsters taking up modeling, I don't know whether necessarily we have to rely on youngsters as much as we used to in the past. I think it's people who have leisure time, who are looking for a craft, and in later years they also have the disposable income, frankly, to do this sort of thing. I certainly, in terms of the larger kits, which are sort of 40, 50, 60, 70 quid, I think we are definitely looking at the leisure builder of a certain age rather than the youngster. But by all means, we should be promoting quick build stuff or starter sets or whatever each company refers to them as simple things for kids, and pushing people. Here's something to take them away from tablets and increase their dexterity and hand-eye coordination, and maybe, God forbid, learn a bit of history as well. But just do something for fun that's not electronic and that is creative and manual. But whether that's going to really make a difference to the model making world in the future, I don't know. It is. I think as I say, I think it's much more a crafting thing in later life that is going to be the core of the model making in the future.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I have particular views on this, as I do with most things, which may seem odd coming from a model shop owner. I think it's a bit of a red herring. For those of you who aren't familiar with the phrase, a red herring is something that doesn't exist, right? It's something touted as something real, which isn't. So it's a false premise, basically, is what I'm getting at. So I have young modelers that come into the shop with their parents because they are funding the hobby. Mm-hmm. The youngest is, I would guess, because I'm rubbish. I mean, I've had kids. I know how old my kids were when they were growing up. Now, between 9 and 12, he's, that sort of age, about that high. But he comes in with his mum. He buys predominantly Airfix kits, predominantly World War II stuff. He knows what he wants. He doesn't buy starter kits so much. He buy any kits. Bought the BF 110, the 110C, is it, from Airfix? Nice kit. I've got others that come in with the dads kind of being dragged along who have got into it as well. The young girl that comes in with one viewer. So I think my opinion, idea, whatever you want to call it, is the kids that want to do modelers, that are potential modelers, are already doing it. Like you said, Gary, it's a crafting. If you want to do that, if you are so fixed on your iPad and somebody gives you a model, you're probably just going to go back to your iPad, right? You're that kind of kid. If you're the sort of parents that just allow your kid to have 6 hours of screen time a night, are you going to support a hobby? Probably not, because you can't be asked. So I think it's just culturally, the country has, countries, I say, have changed. The way we bring up children and the way we entertain ourselves has changed over the years. Now, some will say, the lowest point of growth in the modeling industry was in the 80s. Why? The birth of personal computing. Suddenly, everybody owned a Spectrum. Everybody owned a BBC Model B or whatever. Could write their own programs. Could download them from a cassette, not from the internet because it didn't exist. Explosion of that, right? And then it recovered and started growing again in the 90s, 2000s, as it carried on ever since. Why then has that happened? Why, after the internet, where a huge explosion of availability, PCs become more affordable than ever? Nobody owned a PC, really. I mean, you were really rich if you owned a PC in the 90s. 2000s, most people had a PC. Most people were connected to the internet. 2010s, everybody does have multiple devices, right? Now, everybody has multiple pieces of technology available to them all the time. I'm here. I'm sat with 2 screens on my PC. I've got a phone here. There's smart TV in the front room connected to a computer. Maria's got about 4 phones because she never throws them away. Basically, because then she can have a different account on all of her games, and so she never runs out of free stuff.
Wow.
So why are there more people doing stuff now? Because you would have thought that would have killed modeling completely. But the thing is, there are other ways in. It's not just, and this is where we get kind of that rough segue back to the comment you made before about science, Gary, is that There are different ways people come into the hobby now. It's just different. So Warhammer became incredibly popular from the 90s. Really, in the 2010s, huge explosion. And now it's kind of a staple. Everybody knows about Warhammer. Henry Cavill, men want to be him, women want to be with him. People can look up to him. He's handsome, he's muscular, he's well spoken, he's intelligent. What a bastard. He's a nice guy. But
again, none of the above.
Yeah, he's like, no, I mean, but he's a household name. He's in films and stuff, and he does Warhammer. You've had D&D from when it was in the 70s, the 80s. It was a nerdy thing to do, sort of the 90s, 2000s. Then it started coming in Stranger Things, and it was in ET, and it got into the popular kind of idea. Now it's kind of geek chic. The D&D shows on TV, Amazon. You've got the Critical Role series, Vox Machina. Through D&D, a game that people used to play with bits of paper and dice. That sort of geek chic thing. You would have thought World War II would be a distant memory. I have no direct connection to World War II. My grandfather, so 2 generations up, bought there, but my dad didn't. My mum didn't. They weren't around in it. They were born in the baby boom afterwards. The baby boomers. So how come so many kids know stuff about Matildas and Panzers and stuff? World of Tanks, War Thunder. Why are Revell and Italeri doing associations with them? Why do Revell have an association with Farming Simulator, a mobile game? So I think because of those different things, if you're interested, like you said, in history or something, or you think this tank is cool and stuff, and then you get into you want to know more about it. I got into knowing more about World War II through my uncle's books, right? He was a war gamer. He also had books on infantry weapons and all that sort of. I read those. This is cool. Got to know more about it and went through that. And now it's not books, which are becoming rarer. It's through games like that, and then forums, Reddit, and whatever. So I think it's just a different path that people get introduced to it. And that can happen at a wider range, right? You don't have to have a dad that does models or an uncle that does models. You still have those. But then you also have the war gamers that then get into, doing models. The Warhammer people that go into a shop like mine that has Warhammer and models and just like, oh, actually, the Warhammer stuff seems a bit, childish. Now I'm older and got more disposable income. Maybe I'll try this, a Eurofighter or an F-35 or something, because I liked making those, or I like painting them, or whatever it is. There's YouTube, which has this huge, repository of information and ideas and cool people doing crafty stuff. As in craft stuff, not dodgy stuff. So I just think there are multiple more entry points, and I don't think they have to be located in what we say youngsters, who I think traditionally we think of, 6 to 10, we think of that doing it with your dad on the kitchen table kind of thing, which is a very 1950s, 60s, 70s kind of thought process. And I think that's fine. That still happens, much less. But there are also loads of other ones. So, Steve, not in any way offensive. Please don't take anything we've said as taking offense. No, I think it's a really good question. It's brought up all the time. I just think it's sometimes we need to broaden our minds a little bit into how can people get into the hobby. It doesn't just have to be as a youngster. So I think there are enough things being done because there is a very strong sense of wanting people to carry the mantle because we love this hobby, right? It's given us all so much pleasure and enjoyment, relaxation over the years. Yeah, I'd love somebody else to get into it. I don't care what age they are. Yeah, if they're younger, they get more years out of it, but they'll probably have a hiatus, for drinking, for girls and boys, depending on what gender they are. What, if I'm allowed to say that? having a family or whatever else it is till they get more disposable income and time. I see a lot of people in the shop coming in through that, more disposable income, more time. Those are usually the two. And whatever that means, had a guy in today who just happened to be down in the area. He's based up in, he was currently being based up in Newcastle, but he's been down here for a while. He was buying some models because most of his stuff's up there. There's all kinds of different ways to get into it. Dave, once again, has gifted 5 Man's Model memberships. I can't even say it myself. Man's Model Moments memberships. That's quite a mouthful. Thank you once again, Dave. You were a scholar and a gentleman, and really good to have you gift my controversial Sunday streams. Thank you very much appreciated. One from Casey. I still wait for that well-filtered look and a glass of wine on members stream. I will try to make that happen at some point. I've got my tux still, so I'll have to put some fairly heavy filter on, I think, to make it comply to that AI generated image. Just on that commentary piece about young modelers, Oliver says, as a young modeler myself, 14, I know a surprisingly fair amount of people that model along with me. Yeah, I think sometimes because we as the sort of modeling community, tend to think of model shows, Telford, those kind of things, as representing the entirety of the hobby. We have observation bias. Right, because we, like you said, Gary, my audience is heavily skewed. There are some younger viewers,
yeah,
but it's a thin line before it then rises fairly heavily, like you say, of the sort of 40 to 60 kind of era. Let's call it that. Great big hump there, which is fairly representative, I think, of most model shows you see, and we think that's all there is. But I think in reality, we're just not seeing, that's part of the iceberg. And we're just not seeing necessarily modelers like yourself, Oliver, and your peers. I mean, good God, why would you want to go to a model show with old farts like us? So I absolutely get it. I mean, you're more than welcome. I mean, model shows are for everybody. But, of course, there's transport, there's cost of getting in and everything. So it's an easy thing to take for granted as an adult that you can just go to a model show on a Saturday or a Sunday, when as a 14-year-old, I mean, when I was 14, I wouldn't have been able to do that. That would have been me cycling somewhere for a start, which then would restrict its geography severely, So unless it was happening in my city, that would be it, and living where I do now, that would mean I would never go to a model show. So I think that's a good thing that you've raised there, Oliver. And speaking from people, I specifically went and found some younger, in their 20s guys at Telford a couple of years ago, and asked them what they'd bought and about the IPMS and stuff. And the majority of them had bought World War II subjects, things that we think of as subjects that are old and dying out and stuff. But I think the interest in the history and the events are as strong today as they were 30 years ago. Okay, I have neglected the chat, I'm afraid to say. Nick, thank you very much for becoming a YouTube member, much appreciated. Look forward to seeing you on the channel. For those of you who have been gifted members or have joined, you'll find a community post, that's it, with the Discord invite in. It does expire after, I think, a week or so. So if you can't get in with that, email the channel on the channel email, and I'll refresh that just so that you can get it. That invites you to the private Discord members group, and you get, early views of what I'm pottering on about, or video ideas, all that kind of stuff. So, oh, that is a good question, Ian. My sprue glue thin seems to be a bit thicker by evaporation. Is there a way to reactivate it? Yes, just add some more glue. If you got some Tamiya extra thin or my glue, which is exactly the same, even tube cement, you can put some of that in and just stir it up, and that will thin it out. Likewise, if you buy the normal stuff or the thin stuff or the thick stuff and you want to adjust its consistency, you can do exactly that. Right, same as if you make it yourself. The more liquid cement you add, the thinner it'll be. The less you add, or the more you leave it open, the thicker it'll get. So yeah, even if it dries solid, you can still just add cement and it will reliquefy, just like the plastic which it is.
Mhm.
Dutch Dave, hi Alex and Gary, just for the heads up, this is one of the better stream conversations I've watched in a long time. Thank you very much. Your money is in the post.
Yeah, thanks Dave, I appreciate that, man.
Oh dear. Easy Brother says, comment, I'm a new young modeler. Well, I say young, 57, on my third kit and loving every challenging minute. In fact, it may be the answer to eternal youth. I think that is a fantastic sentiment. Thank you for that. And I think that is a good note for us to kind of round out the night, because I realize I appreciate I have mainly been talking. Apologies, Gary, for about 2 hours now.
No worries.
But Gary, perhaps you'd just like to tell us what's going on in your channel in the next week or so. What have you got coming up for people?
Well, tomorrow night we've got a live stream from here, so 8 till 10 on the channel as usual. We have Nick's Conundrum kit has already arrived, so you have to guess what it is, who makes it, and what scale it is. If you're the first to get it right, you get your own mystery box from Nick, which is really nice. This week he's actually sent me two. One of them is a mascot for my new construction facility here, the North Wing, as I like to call it. So I'll be broadcasting from there. Saturday is when my subscribers my supporters get their video pops up. Very, very similar to what you do, but it's just me talking to the camera, just chewing the fat and just letting them know what's going on. I'll give them a more detailed tour of the very nearly completed facility here. And then
how is that going? Because I did see your setup, your green screen and everything coming up. I think I saw that on Facebook, actually.
My dear boy, green screen, auto cue.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
And a ring light, TV and record deck. And actually, the thing that is blowing my mind at the moment is the aircon cum heater that we have. Okay, so put that in, thinking, right, in the summer this is going to get hot because the door faces south, so it's going to get. We need aircon, and most of our house has got aircon in it. We're big believers in it. But the thing is the most incredibly powerful heating. Like yesterday morning, it was 0. The ambient temperature was 0 Celsius. Okay, the room here was 11.5 because it's pretty well insulated. Turned on the heater. And just by extracting the heat from the air, it put it up to 14 degrees in about 5 minutes.
Wow.
And that's pulling heat out of air that's 0. It's really amazing and very, very energy efficient. It's very electrically efficient. So yeah, it's good.
We'll have to do a comparison, Gary. We'll have to do like a joint stream or video or something. It's you're setting up your stuff. I thought it was amusing because I saw your post on Facebook, and I thought I could have just almost taken the same photographs. I've got a ring light here. I've got an auto cue. I've just set up my my record player to play on my old vinyl. So we should do it independently and then compare and contrast and see.
I think your stash is considerably larger, however.
Oh, I don't have the stash here. That would be. I'd have no room.
Yeah, but yeah, it's good. Yeah, fridge and a coffee machine, obviously, most important things. But yeah, it's good.
I have my kitchen, just beyond that
Oh,
door.
there
So
you go. Yeah, my kitchen is the whole length of the garden away. So that's the
yeah,
downside.
yeah, you don't want that. No.
Yeah, it's good to actually finally, after I guess 10 weeks altogether, I actually shot my first box opening today with it, the new Airfix Eurofighter Typhoon. Actually shot just over there. So that was
Nice.
a big moment for me to actually start producing new material in here. But yeah, live stream is going to be here from here tomorrow night as well.
Be interested. I'll be interested to see your video on building that. It's interesting.
I've heard a few things about it, but yeah,
Nice kit. Not sure it's a starter.
Yeah, this has happened quite a lot. I mean, that was my big problem with the Tiger Moth they did in the Lidl offer this year. Which, I'm sorry, if you're telling people you have to carve out bits of it and stick other bits in, mate, that's not a starter set. I'm sorry, it's just not.
No.
And a biplane, dude.
I had to clamp my Eurofighter to get it to fit, and I did that. I put my video up, and a few people said, "How did you find the build?" And I said, because I'm having a problem with the lower seam. And it's just like, I had to clamp mine. It's like, and that's not something you can expect, from something where you think, well, I've got everything in the box that I need. Yeah. Have you got some clamps?
Yeah. Got a few.
Yeah.
Got a few clamps. We'll be okay.
So yeah, I mean, if you've got a few kits under your belt, I think it's a nice kit. But, well, apart from, I won't say anything, but check the pilot out.
It's so small.
Have you seen his right leg?
I haven't bothered. Not that much detail yet.
So I thought mine was maybe miscast.
Right.
I mentioned it on Airfix and Chill, and the others were like, "I'm gonna have." Oh my god! Yeah. Apparently, that's just how it is.
Oh dear, that's not good.
No, mine. I'm actually. I need to take a short of it. I'm going to do a short of mine because I said he's going to spend his life as like the Joker in Tim Burton's Batman. He's got a date with a vat of chemicals, so I'm going to put him in some screw goo thin. Do a 1 minute short of him just sinking into it.
Yeah. A bit like the end of Terminator 2, then.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to do it, so he's putting his thumb up. That'd be too much work.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you very much for joining me, Gary. I'll, as always
a pleasure, Alex. You know that, mate.
As always, I'll put a link to Gary's channel down below on the recording of the stream. Thank you for everybody that has commented, asked questions. I hope I haven't offended anybody by what I've said. That's not the intent. It was a matter of explanation of what I was saying and the rationale behind it, and some of, yes, this is a hobby for our relaxation, but we can't always free ourselves and disentangle ourselves from politics. And certainly when it comes to Ukraine, I'm very firmly planting my flag in the sand in support of them, support of ICM, support of the other Ukrainian manufacturers. And I, for one, certainly hope that the war ends soon, and not under those terms of just giving away half of the country to Russia. But anyway, my personal opinion. I hope you all have a very pleasant week. Good weekend when you get there. See you next time, guys.
Bye.